And I don't know where this is going to fit in the chronology of how this is airing, on the grounds that I tend to have to jump around to avoid things being samey, because for me, on my end, I just did Dozel's route in the Garma Lives end, and now I'm going to be doing Char's route in the Garma Lives end, and it's this samey over and over and over again that I try to avoid in the video publishing by dispersing these things around a little bit more. But for me, I end up getting a little tired of it because it's the same fight, just playing a different character, ideally in a different mobile suit. This feels like a rocket job.
And may the glory of victory be yours.
So, yes, the point I wanted to get to, and of course, for me, I'm saying it because it's still fresh on my mind, but there's probably going to be an intervening video where I didn't get to the point because I'm getting to it now. Giant humanoid robots, why aren't they a thing? Well, engineering-wise, there's a bunch of reasons, because the human form was created for a variety of natural reasons, and the point is that we make machines for us to use. A humanoid robot is a machine we can use, but in order for it to serve some kind of greater function, it needs to have a tool. I mean, if you consider it here, these mobile suits aren't all that intimidating without heat hawks and guns and so forth and so on. And the logic there becomes, why would you design a machine that requires a massive handheld cannon that can only be held in the massive hands of the machine you've designed? It's a logical conundrum. It just doesn't make sense. Now, something like BattleTech kind of resolves that, because the guns are attached to the platform and not held in giant hands. Usually, because some of them are different and weird and cool. But that's not the real issue. We don't really have bipedal locomotion of any description. Now, part of that is the inherent complexity in any kind of walking motion, especially bipedalism, where you're not naturally stable because you're trying to suspend yourself on 2 points on the ground. I mean, even with tripedalism, that would be difficult, because at some point you're going to have to lift a leg, and then you're bipedal, and the problem reemerges. With a quadrupedal design, you can sort of pull like ancient sauropods, like Diplodocus, and kind of only lift one leg at a time, so you can maintain stability on 3, but that's not particularly fast, you understand. Oh boy, that's not good. White base is escaping. It's actually escaping. I'm probably a one-tap. Oh, just get up in time for me to rocket you. Oh, that was unbelievably close, because White Base's giant warship ass is just hanging over the level border, I know it. And I almost died.
Returning.
So I made the point that, like, humanoid robots are not a thing, but they are, funnily enough, because the South Koreans made one. I believe it's called Method 2. And yes, it's got 2 arms, 2 legs, a cockpit in the chest, and is controlled by a human onboard riding person. So yeah, they actually made one of those, and it's a thing, and it exists, and it works. Although they have not tested it untethered, because it is a very expensive piece of equipment, and if it falls over, it's going to break a bunch of shit, and it's probably going to injure the person riding it, because they are riding it like 10 feet up in the air. That's not a fall you want to make on your face. And I mean, they didn't build it with the anticipation that, oh, this will revolutionize industry or warfare, whatever. They built it on the grounds that, you know, this thing has existed in a fictitious context for so long. Let's see if there's anything to it, because ultimately you can have all the theoretical knowledge in the world. Until you actually try it, you don't know anything for certain. So it walks. It could theoretically run. It'd be quite a rough ride if it did. And it's a thing. It exists. So for those of you wondering, when will there be humanoid robots and the awesomeness will happen, it already did. It wasn't widely publicized, because what was there to publicize? It was basically a intellectual curio that was made in the interest of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to X? And then they did, and it was, but that was the end of it. And I often point out the fact that, okay, so let's say you are trying to justify humanoid robots in a fictitious context. There are a number of things you must consider. One of the big ones is size. Most fictional humanoid or non-humanoid robots are altogether too large to justify anything. And yes, unfortunately, that also applies to Gundams, which are, I want to say about 20 meters, give or take, in height. That is entirely too much. And the thing is, don't think I'm just casting flack at Gundam. Battletech does the exact same thing. Between 15 to 20 meters, again, entirely too large. If you're looking for a realistic robot, you're talking about 4 to 5 meters. That's kind of the hard limit. Because here's the thing, so you build a machine with legs. It can do all of the sort of fancy maneuvers that we humans are known for, like crouching, or jumping, or, you know, leaning, that kind of thing. That you can't really do in a vehicle, because it's not articulate in that way. Here's the issue, so you've got a big crouching robot, and you think, okay, it can crouch behind something. What are you going to crouch behind when you're 20 meters tall? What kind of infrastructure will conceal something that big? And in nature, there aren't exactly abundant mountains on the ground that you're gonna... It just doesn't make sense. Now, on the other hand, you shrink it down to about 4 meters, you could hide that behind a residential home. Hell, it could crouch behind a single-story structure. There is actually a lot of sense there. There we go, right before he killed Garma. So yeah, you cut it down to 4 meters, about the height of 2 people, and suddenly crouching works. If it goes prone, it could maybe hide behind a car, even. And it becomes light enough that it can jump without collapsing its own legs, or collapsing the concrete underneath it, or whatever. And everything starts to make sense. So, a realistic scale, you're looking at something like Votoms. That works beautifully in point of fact.
And may the glory of victory be
Votoms, obsolete. The amp suits from Avatar, they're appropriately scaled, but of course it's James Cameron, he likes making things as realistic as possible. But you go Gundam or God help you Evangelion size with things, and there's no... On Pacific Rim, another case of robots that are entirely too large. But of course that wasn't trying to be realistic, it was giant robots fighting giant monsters. It was buoyed by cool factor, and we accept this. But then we have the other issue, why humanoid? It's like, well, how's it gonna do stuff? Well, what do you want it to do? We want it to shoot a cannon at an enemy. Let's consider that our hypothetical model. We want it to shoot a cannon at something. Okay, well, why don't you just bolt the cannon to the robot? Why does it need a hand with all of its delicate little fingers to carry a cannon? You can just bolt it to the robot. And what you end up with is something akin to, you know, something more out of Star Wars, like an AT-ST or an AT-AT, where it's just got guns on it. Because, yeah, that's how you would do that. So you can potentially justify legs, but the humanoid form becomes a bit of a problem. And one of the ideas is that, okay, well, a human is going to be controlling it. And we are most familiar with manipulating ourselves, our bodies, and, you know, we have 2 arms, 2 legs. The problem is, to make the most of that logic, again, you have to be on the lighter side of things, because moving a machine that is that massive is going to have a problem with inertia. It's not going to react as quickly as your body. It'll feel like trying to maneuver while underwater. So you need it small, but you also need some way of actually manipulating it in a form that allows for the nuance and complexity of human motion. And a lot of the sort of cockpit controls and so forth that you see in giant robots are tank-like in nature. You have control yokes or throttle sticks. And presumably the fine motor actions are handled by the computer, which undermines the notion of it's under human control, it should have a human range of motion, because the human is just telling him in broad strokes what he wants it to do. I want you to go forward. I want you to jump. Not unlike how characters in virtual reality are controlled. I press forward, and my Zaku walks forward. Oh, forgot. It's a good thing I have recover. So I press forward, and the machine walks forward, and the finer points of that motion are... Well, I mean, this is in a virtual environment, so the machine is moving and animating in distinct things. It's not actually interacting with the environment in a complex way. But the point is, it would be similar in an actual robot in terms of how you control it, if you were using those sorts of hand controls. There are only two ways you can get that full range of human motion captured and justify the humanoid form. Direct brain link, some Ghost in the Shell cyberpunk type stuff, that could work. But by that same logic, would you still need the nuance of the human form if that's what you were doing? That becomes questionable. The other thing is motion capture. Again, James Cameron kind of takes that ball and runs with it, because while the legs of the AM suits are controlled by a computer system, given subtle direction by the person kind of doing little baby steps in the what is ostensibly the abdomen of the unit, the hands, which is where you're making your more complex interactions with the environment, as opposed to just moving around, which to some extent it makes sense to, like, leave the legs to their own devices and let them be robotically controlled, because the machine understands the dynamics of its balance better than the person riding it. So as it needs to make adjustments based off of gyroscopic inputs and so forth, it makes sense to leave that in the hands of the automated control circuits. But your hands, how you interact with things, where you point your big cannon, how, you know, the container you're pushing around, because the AM suits are also used for sort of light industrial work. I got animation lock there. And again, I need to stop doing this because it seems perfectly paced to screw me over. Oh, finally. So, that's one of the problems with the notion of we're going to, like, motion capture the operator in order to allow for extremely dynamic controls. At the scale where the whole humanoid robot thing works, you don't really have enough room to do that. Oh, that's... You don't want to be parked right next to the Gundam at 87 armor. No, that is not a thing. Oh, God, Garma's going to die. Oh, I'd love to focus the big... Oh, this is going to end badly, I can tell. Oh, God. Okay, fine. Then we just hack and slash. We lock onto the target. What are you doing? Just hack. Just stay away from... Okay. Yeah, I need to get some distance and use my rockets. And hope that... Oh, no, we're going to lose. If I focus on the Gundam, I'll end up dead. I don't have a recover for Garma, and one more beam hit, and he is absolute toast. Yep. Well, I'm going to leave this failure in. Not the first one. There was a time when it's like, nope, I'm reloading save. I will have no failures on my record. Yeah, I got over that level of perfectionism. Because it's just going to drive you crazy. Sooner than later, probably. Let's try that again. Besides, I can't cut up the footage. I've been going on and on about robots, and I want to... I don't know what I would have missed where I started talking, so we're gonna leave that in. I'm just gonna continue. So the AM suit resolves the problem of motion capture in a confined space by only capturing the upper half of the body's motions, and even there, it's pointed out that there's like a 2-to-1 gain ratio on the arm movement. Wow, thanks, Garma, you absolute shithead. So basically, you don't have enough room in the cockpit, the chassis of the amp suit, to achieve a full range of motion of your arms. So it amplifies the motion to 1.5 to like double what it would be. Which is why it's purported lore-wise that the amp suit is one of those things that's easy to sort of pick up, but difficult to master, because you have to gain... This is just going wrong. Gundam ground types, missile launchers, Garma's just getting his ass kicked. This has basically just become a DPS war of me taking down the big tray before I or Garma get exploded, and it's not going well. Oh, great. You know, if I could kill Armoro, then I might be able to balance. Yeah, I gotta focus armor. Oh, God, but the cannons are still active. He shows up too early. Yeah, if I hover around here fighting him, I'm gonna get ripped apart by the cannons. Okay, I got missiles back. It's back to focusing on the damn big tray. Just kill it before it... Hey, Armoro, can you pick a target and stick with it, please? Okay, I thought the cannons could not aim this high. Evidently, I was mistaken. Now, stop switching targets, please! I'm gonna lose again. I'm going to get behind Big Tray. I'm going to see if I can just hack it. Last bit of health, and I'm immediately interfered with by the Gundam ground type. And I'm dead. Oh no. Almost, though. Get behind it, get behind it. Okay, that might save Garma. Okay, DPS, DPS, just kill it, and quickly. Oh, that was way closer than I would have liked. Got a Gundam ground type diving in on me. Holy hell! It's just a sudden difficulty spike. Great! That's exactly what I need. I am using a Zaku in an alt path. Technically, a second tier alt path, because Char's first tier alt path would be Lala Live, so... It'll be easier when I'm not using a Zaku. Like the Zagok. Let's bust this out and hope things don't go horribly. Now, so the amp suit is a viable example of a mecha that would work, but there is another one that came to mind that technically predates it, and that would be the Landmates from, Appleseed. Now, they kind of flipped the amp suit configuration around, sort of. Like, your legs are in the legs of the machine. Only in the upper legs, though. Like, your foot ends before its knee. That's how it's designed, because it's essentially 2 times the height of a person, so your limbs would be half the length, and when you math that out, it all makes sense. And it would make sense that your legs would be in its legs, but your shoulders wouldn't be in its shoulders, because if it's going to be 2 times a person's scale, its shoulders are going to be 2 times apart, and you can't really facilitate that, you know, unless your elbows are at the shoulder, but then that creates all sorts of new problems. But the hips are right next to each other, so that's a thing you can do. And then for that, like, really wide range of arm movement, you use a motion replication system where you've got small... They are actually powered arms, because not only are they armored, because they're exposed, but you need force feedback, and to get that force feedback, you would need actuators in the sleeves to let you know how much resistance the main arms are getting. So you basically have powered armor arms, and the main arms replicate the posture of the powered armor arms and amplify the force. And so the thing is, of course, is that while humanoid robots have questionable utility, powered armor makes sense because, you know, people want to be armored, and if armor gets too heavy, they need something to support it, so the armor supports itself. And again, there, the whole full range of human motion makes sense because there's a person actually wearing it, and they're going to be moving through a full range of human motion, so the suit has to be able to replicate that. It has to be able to fit the person inside of it. And that's kind of where the Landmate kind of wins awards for practicality, because as far as being a mecha goes, it's kind of a hybrid between a mecha and a suit of power armor. Because your legs are inside of it, you're not self-contained to a cockpit in the torso. And other details that are, like, directly rifted off of power armor is the stuff like your arms are actually in sleeves that imitate the function of powered armor. Now, of course, we don't actually have function... Like, weirdly, we have some exoskeletons. Powered armor in a military setting is still not really a thing. The big issue isn't even really would it work. The issue is how are we going to power it? Because we can build an exoskeleton that can carry tremendous weight and amplify the strength of the user, no problem. And the problem is it runs out of batteries in, like, 2 hours. Soldiers can have to walk for miles at a time and need several hours of continuous use. We would need a more compact energy source. Now, you could stick just a good old diesel motor on the back of the thing. That would probably do it. But then you've got a guy with an actual motorcycle engine strapped to his ass, you know, vibrating and being hot and putting out fumes, and it would just be a very unpleasant experience. Not to mention, if you were using it on the inside of a building, that unpleasantness would be amplified tenfold, because big loud diesel engine going off behind you indoors. Fantastic. Great idea. And the real problem there is just the fact that battery technology, and I feel like I'm quoting Evangelion here because they needed those umbilical cables, battery technology even today is such that we can't compact enough power into a battery compared to a chemical fuel source. So if you need more power, the easy solution is just stop relying on a battery and use a gas-burning or a diesel-burning motor. And this is the point where people hope, like, fusion power! No. But your heart's in the right place. The whole reason why fusion power is supposed to be, like, the hope for the future is that it allows for nuclear energy without ease of weaponization into nuclear weapons. Because nuclear power is surprisingly environmentally friendly. It's actually a very good thing. We'd stop poisoning the atmosphere, all kinds of good stuff. But if you can make a nuclear power plant, you can make a nuclear bomb. And for all the benefits, the benevolence of nuclear power, at least when it's handled carefully, sensibly, and responsibly, nuclear weapons are a tragedy on mankind. So fusion power is great because all the sort of energy density of the atom of nuclear power, but you really can't weaponize it in an atomic fashion. The issue is that this major boon is also the major problem. The reason you can't weaponize it is that maintaining a fusion reaction is extremely difficult. And it's so difficult we haven't quite cracked it yet. One thing we do know is, of course, in order for fusion power to be energy profitable, to produce usable surplus power, bigger the better. Which is why the fusion drive prototypes, or the fusion generational prototypes they're making, are the size of cities. Now, fission power, it's a lot easier to get energy out of. You can have a fissile power source that's about the size of a jet engine. Or, you know, the size of a small car. That's still large by any means, but it's not the size of a damn city. But the thing is, if you were hoping for some Iron Man, fits in the palm of your hand, affordable, robust, compact fusion reactor, keep dreaming. It doesn't seem physically possible. Now, once we start plundering the riches in the solar system, we have the ability to create fusion drives that could theoretically be made as small as a jet engine. They would not be very efficient, but they would nevertheless work. The reason we can't do that now is because of the issue with fusibility. Like right now, the substances that are most inclined to fuse without requiring tremendous amounts of pressure and energy are also the ones which give us the least payout. So tritium and deuterium. Tritium's extremely rare and is actually most of the tritium we work with is actually made in fission reactors. They line them with lithium and the neutrons bind and we get tritium, and it's... So yeah, tritium is difficult to source and dependent upon fission, for the most part, for its creation. There's also the issue that a lot of the energy of a deuterium-tritium cycle is lost in free neutrons, which we can't capture for energy. That means a lot more neutron radiation, which is bad. And that also means that you need bigger shielding. You're getting less energy out of the reaction you're putting in, which is kind of defeating the whole point of a fusion power plant. So there's deuterium and deuterium, which requires more energy to achieve fusion. And you get two byproducts from that. You get tritium and helium-3. Now, because, again, of the whole fusion cross-section thing, your deuterium still in the reactant and your tritium will start fusing, and your deuterium and your helium-3 will start fusing. And then eventually these reactors end up with helium-4, which is stable helium. Where was... I'm talking fusion power. Hang on, let me get my bearings. Okay, so... how do we make compact fusion? Helium-3. You can fuse helium-3 with itself, and what it creates is what's known as an aneutronic fusion reaction. Basically, it doesn't release neutrons, or at least not very many. You can go lighter on the shielding, and that lighter on the shielding is important because, you see, the neutrons released from a fusion reaction do more than just make everything around it radioactive and unpleasant. They also erode the electromagnets you're using to confine the reaction in the first place. And one of the ideas is that magnets are, of course, more powerful the closer you can get them to whatever they're trying to attract or repel. If you can create a reaction that doesn't require heavy shielding and won't, by merit of not releasing neutrons, erode the electrodes that are confining the reaction, you can get those electrodes much closer to the actual fuel source. And the closer they get, the less energy they need to confine the fuel, equals efficiency, meaning you can make the whole thing much, much smaller. And lighter. Great, so why aren't we already doing it? Helium-3 is extremely unstable, and not in the usual sense of, oh god, it's going to explode. The atomic half-life, or whatever, of helium-3 is about 12 years. So in less than a typical human lifetime, if a helium-3 atom exists, it will decay into something else. This is why you don't find helium-3 naturally occurring on Earth, because most of the substances that do occur on Earth were created in the hearts of stars, but that was a long time ago. Any helium-3 that would have been here would have long since dispersed, been lost to the eons. So the issue with helium-3 is you either need to find a place to get it, or you need to find a way to make it. Now, the getting it, well, technically, again, it has to be made recently, because otherwise it'll decay. One of the theories is either Jupiter or the Moon. The Sun is putting out a lot of helium-3 with solar winds, and we figure the Moon might be catching some of that in the rocks, so we can, filter it out of the Moon rocks. Very handy. Another reason for us to go back there and build up some kind of lasting base. In fact, you could make an orbital elevator on the Moon out of something as simple as Kevlar. You don't need carbon, nanotube, fullerene, anything, because there's so much less gravity on the Moon. So the Moon is considered a source. We're not actually sure how much would be there. Jupiter is also considered a source because its magnetosphere basically captures everything, much larger than the planet itself, and it is the biggest in the solar system. I mean, it's basically kind of a dummy star. If it had any more energy, it would be a star. So we figure you could get helium-3 in Jupiter, which this actually ties into the Gundam lore, because the Minovsky-Ionesco fusion reactor and the Minovsky ultra-compact fusion reactor, we know that helium-3 is one of the fuel sources, and ships regularly go to Jupiter to retrieve it. The Jupitris, Captain Chiraco's mothership, is a helium-3 tanker that makes regular trips between Earth and Jupiter. I wonder what it's getting on Jupiter. Now, the alternative is basically build a reactor that can process deuterium and deuterium, and one of the byproducts you'll get from that is helium-3. If you can isolate the helium-3 from that reaction, you can use a large city-scale reactor running a standard deuterium cycle to produce helium-3 to run compact reactors in compact machines, and then you don't need to harvest it from a distant planet, you can just make the stuff. And of course, you're also producing useful power, although some of your energy gains would likely be lost because you have to scavenge helium-3 from the reactor. So you'd probably have dedicated power-generating reactors, which just run the fuel into helium-4, and then reactors that are intended specifically for the creation of helium-3 in compact devices. Now, this is all the more reason to find it naturally sourced in the solar system instead of making it yourself, because it would probably be a lot more efficient to harvest it from a location of abundance than trying to make it on your own. Is this going to unlock Dozal Lives? That's weird. It's still not unlocked. Oh well, we'll play it through. Yeah, I'm gonna have to replay that. That'll be an off-screen bit. No, we're still in Gelgoog mode. Oh god, we have to protect. Okay, now I'm going to invest in some upgrading. That's what I am going to do. In fact, I'm going to put 2 whole levels into this Gelgoog. Fingers crossed.
May the glory of victory be yours.
So yeah, fusion reaction or fusion power will probably never be small enough to be in the palm of your hand. Although, with nanotechnology, there are theoretical nano batteries that can store 10 times, that's a whole order of magnitude, the power of modern batteries in compact packages. So those might be viable for running your giant robots. Yeah, it's not going to be fusion power. The smallest that gets, and it's very inefficient when it does get that small. Still, nuclear energy is still nuclear energy. It's leagues above fossil fuels. The smallest that's going to get is like a jet engine. That's not particularly small. So, if you're powering your giant robot with nuclear energy, that could justify having it be the size of a Gundam, because if it was the size of an AM suit or a landmate, it's not going to be able to support that kind of power generation. But if it's that small, it doesn't really need to. You could get away with a high-density battery, or just a motor. You know, God, go the heavy gear route, you know? I make references to heavy gear, nobody knows what I'm talking about it. I was first acquainted with heavy gear in the animated TV series, which wasn't bad, wasn't good, it was a product of its time. But yeah, there was a game based on that, like 2 or 3, I don't know. But that's another series of robots in the kind of comfort zone for realism. And a distinctive feature of robots in heavy gear is that they usually have like a big 2-cylinder motor on their back. Like their backpack is literally just an engine. And that's an easy solution to the whole how's it powered problem. Just put a big gas motor on it. Or if you want to be environmentally friendly, make it biodiesel or something. Or wait till you have nano batteries that can actually store that much power. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can do it. I mean, there was one company developing a magnetic mirror fusion drive that was supposed to be this revolutionary thing. They soon noticed that it did not quite perform as expected, which everybody but them figured it would. Like, innovation comes with a fair amount of wishful thinking, but at the end of the day, it has to actually work. And I think these guys had a little bit too much wishful thinking, like, why is everybody using tokamaks when we could use magnetic mirrors and it'll be smaller? It's like, because they tried magnetic mirrors, and they found it was just not efficient. It didn't work. Oh, but ours are different because we're putting our magnets closer. And they soon discovered that the magnets eroded very rapidly because of neutron radiation. Their drive might work when we actually do start performing aneutronic helium-3 reactions, but right now, no. So at best, you could say they're ahead of their time, technologically. otherwise a lot of wishful thinking going on over there.
Returning.
Because that's the issue, is that you're subjecting... You can't let the fusion material contact the outer walls, because it needs to be extraordinarily hot, and usually that heat is generated by tremendous pressure.
And may the glory of
And
victory be yours.
you need it in a vacuum too, because otherwise oxygen or any other gas will absorb the heat and reduce the efficiency of the reaction, and create eddies and all sorts of other nastiness. But the point is that you want the magnetic field to confine this material. There's inertial confinement, which I question the utility of that in terms of power generation, because it's sort of pulse detonation based, and I have concerns about, like, there are problems with that. So we have magnetic confinement, where you just sort of squeeze the fusible material really tightly with a magnetic field. And the problem there is that magnetic fields are subject to eddies and flux, and these things are both bad for maintaining strength and consistency of containment. And a weak point of magnetic mirror designs is that the particles have to bounce back and forth inside of a cylinder, but the end caps of the cylinder have to arrest the inertial property of these accelerated particles. And that makes the end caps a kind of structural weak point. So what's the solution? How do we get rid of the ends? You make a loop, which is why, tokamaks, toroidal fusion reactors. There's a bunch of stuff I've read up on it. I am not physicist, no Big Bang Theory here. I just read Scientific American articles and, culture myself. Watch some Nova programming. But yeah, we're winding down here. We got maybe 2 missions after this left. I've talked about humanoid robots and the fact that they do exist but don't work as often depicted in fiction. I've talked about designs that could work. And I've talked about fusion power for some reason. I suppose that power is the big issue with why existing exoskeletons and so forth are underperforming, because they're limited by battery power. This is going to be an information-filled episode that is tangentially related to the subject of the game, also known as standard operating procedure on this channel. I don't know. In life, I'm going to close it off by saying that in life people inquire how I know things, or more so why I know things. Like, okay, so you read Scientific American articles, you watched Nova programs, you wikied it and looked at, scientists doing stuff about fusion. Why? What's the point? Like, do I intend to go into nuclear physics? No. Am I running a car with a fusion drive? No, I'm not. So where's the interest? My philosophy is that as human beings, our main advantage over all the other creatures on the planet is our big brain. We smart. And the thing is that the brain itself is kind of pointless without filling it with knowledge. Why would you not fill your mind with more knowledge? And besides which, whatever happened at the time where you could answer a question like that just by saying, I was curious. I didn't need to know, but I found out anyway, because I was curious. These days, whenever curiosity is the subject of conversation, it's because somebody's gossiping or being snooty. Char vanishes from the scene until Zeta Gundam, so this didn't really change all that much, to be honest. I'm just bundling in the Join Dozel route because it's like 3 missions, so who cares? Oh, correction, it's 2 missions. Well, how is he gonna be in here? Oh, right, I should use the Xeon for that last one. Well, I upgraded the Gelgoog, I'm taking advantage of that. We're getting looser and looser into my concern with canonical accuracy, even though there shouldn't be any concern because we're already off the rails with regards to the canon as it is. We're writing our own tale here, or more specifically, we're following the tale written by the writers of this game.
That's it.
Yeah, no, it just frustrates me that it's like, why do you know how an engine works? Are you a mechanic? No, I was just curious. Why were you curious? I don't... That's basically like asking somebody, why is your favorite color this? Why is your favorite flower that? I mean... Oh, it took me a while to realize that honestly, they were just fucking with me. Because there's this weird brain envy, I think, where it's like, the moment you know something more than somebody else, it turns into this thing where it's like, oh, how dare you be more informed than I am. I am upset by this. So they try taking the piss out of you, like, oh, why do you know this? Why do you know that? You're making me look bad. Stop it. It just pisses me off. It's like, can't I just know things? Can't I satisfy my addiction for knowledge? Because arguably that's what it is. Because I spend maybe too long reading up on things, learning more about them than I'm ever going to use in life, which makes it kind of a waste of effort. Learning about internal combustion engines was actually fun. There's so many variants to how to make that work. Like the spinning engine case of World War I fighters, and that was an interesting thing to read up on. And then they used rotating crankshafts and spinning engine cases in order to, like, double the RPM without actually having to increase stress on the crankcase. That was clever. It's not still used because you have a total loss oiling system, which is not very efficient. It does benefit from not needing a flywheel, because the mass of the engine becomes the flywheel. Cue the point where I have to explain people what the flywheel is and why it exists. It's like, well, do you know what top dead center and bottom dead center are? No. And it's like, well, then there's a lot more I'd have to explain. How much time do you got? Okay, well, that was straightforward. Yeah, you might have noticed the chatter has thinned out. I've run out of things to say. At least not without starting on an entirely new tangent, which will take altogether more time than is present in this probably already hour-long video. Incidentally, if these videos are getting too long, feel free to inform me, although that will mean me cutting character routes down into segments. I don't know which would be more annoying, having to listen to me talk for an hour, or having a character's route split into different bits. Fine, Gelgoog, I'm probably going to regret it, who cares. I've been at... I know for a certainty I've probably been at this for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And again, it's the same route back to back, so yes, that gets a bit grating. I mean, I could keep playing, but I'd probably prefer to, like, get into the AUG or something, but that means a save game, and a quit out, and then load the AUG route. I understand that they were trying to sort of keep the alternate paths kind of under their sleeve, which is why you have to beat the alternate paths to freely switch between the different routes. But it would have been so much more convenient if I could just do that by default and not have to load and, well, save and load and the whole business. Wait, why am I fighting Sayla?
Give it a rest.
Uh-oh. Oh, it's a good thing he wasn't shooting at her, because I would have ended up sponging that with my face. What is he shooting at? Oh, great. This is not going well. Because the issue was, even if I had, like, tried to power through the routes that will unlock my ability to shift between the different factions, I'd still have to play all these Xeon routes. To unlock their special route, I have to play through all of these anyway. So what's the point? And then there's the fact that to play these routes, I had to grind for battle points. So there basically is just no easy way of getting the special routes unlocked to be able to freely travel between the factions. And so I'm left to avoid the frustration of constantly load saving and losing my place and not knowing what in the hell I'm talking about, having to run the same route several times in a row. Well, not the same route, but the same series of battles on the same timeline. Again, it's just, I'm trying to express why I'm getting a little tired of what I'm doing here. I have enjoyed talking about humanoid robots and fusion power. And, of course, it wouldn't be me without a small rant on the grounds of, you know, oh, God. I don't know, I just feel like there was a time when you were appreciated for your intellectual input. And, you know, intelligence was something to aspire to. You know, learn more, be smarter, and at some point along the line, it became something people belittle you for. Oh, look at the nerd over here. In my mind, nerd is a badge of honor, because it means that you are well-informed. Geek is a bit more tenuous. That means that you're very niche. You know, kind of a Western form of otaku. Thanks, Dozel. Was that Garma? I've completely lost track. It's somebody. It's a named character. They're important, we swear. Can I stop getting friendly fired? Oh, and he's iframed during... Oh, there we go. That's solved it. Yeah, because the Big Zam damages anything near its feet when it walks, which is why it's so inclined towards friendly fire, especially when the AI is controlled. All they have to do is walk in your general direction, and sooner or later they'll end up damaging you. I feel like when to launch the arms is like using the Force. Yeah, well... I guess the Force is strong with this one. I actually timed that perfectly. Oh, and there's another gun tank. Can I kill something? There's two gun tanks. Can I kill something squishier that is not going to require so much effort? At least one of those got through, and friendly fired one of my teammates. You can't blame me, the AI controls the hands. I only have control over the timing. Oh, that one didn't even shoot because I ran out of charge. One thing this game doesn't depict, which is why I was surprised, because I did play this before seeing the first series. Well, I played Federation vs. Xeon, not this specifically, but because the game doesn't include it, I didn't realize that there were actually wires connecting the hands of the Zeong to the mobile suit. It was the same with the Brabro. The Elmeth had proper bits, but obviously something has to be transmitting power to the hands of the Zeong because fusion reactors were not that compact at the time. You didn't have fin funnels yet. So, escape to access. So, yeah. Off-screen, I'm going to run this route again because I'm almost certain that's going to pop that into existence. I'm curious where I'm going to put it, though, because, I mean, who knows? You might see me run the rest of Garma's route. It depends on how long this is running, but yeah, again. This will be an off-screen bit